Shabbat Shalom, everyone. It's lovely to be with all of you this Erev Shabbat, all from the comfort of our homes. It reminds me of about like a year ago. But we hope that everyone is safe and comfortable. And I think we're going to begin with a Nigun.
We are. Die, da, da, die, 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 die. Die, da, da, die, 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 die. Die, da, da, die, 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 die. Die, 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 da, da, die, die, die. Die, 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 die. Die, 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 die. Die, 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 die. Die, die, da, da, die, die, die. Yai da 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 da. Yai da 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 da. Yai da 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 da. Yai da 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 da. Yai 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 da 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 da.
Going to share my screen so you can all see the Siddur. I begin with a prayer of gratitude for all that is holy in my life. God needs no words, no English or Hebrew, no semantics, and no services, but I need them. Through prayer, I can sense my inner strength, my inner purpose, my inner joy, my capacity to love. As I reach upward in prayer, I sense these qualities in my Creator. To love God is to love each other, to work to make our lives better. To love God is to love the world God created and to work to perfect it. To love God is to love dreams of peace and joy that illumine all of us and to bring that vision to life.
We continue with Shalom Aleichem on page 142. Shalom Aleichem, Malachei Hasharet, Malachei Elyon, Melech, Malachei Hamlachim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Bachem Shalom, Malachei Hashalom, Malachei Elyon, Melech, Malachei Hamlachim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Baruch Hu Malachei Hashalom, Malachei Elyon, Melech, Malachei Hamlachim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Tzitchem l'shalom, Malachei Hashalom, Malachei Elyon, Melech, Malachei Hamlachim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And continuing with Kabbalat Shabbat, we turn to page 138 for Lecha Dodi. Lecha Dodi likrat kala, b'nei Shabbat nekabela. Lecha Dodi likrat kala, b'nei Shabbat nekabela. Shamor v'zachor v'dibur echad lishmianu. שמול תפארת ולתהילה לך דודי לקראת קלה פני שבת נקבלה לך דודי לקראת קלה פני שבת נקבלה לקראת שבת לכו ונלכה היא מקור הברכה מראש מקדם נשוכה סוף מעשה במחשבה תחילה לך דודי לקראת קלה פני שבת נקבלה לך דודי לקראת קלה פני שבת נקבלה התעוררי כי באורך קומי אורי שיר דברי כבוד אדוני עלייך נגלה לך דודי לקראת קלה פני שבת נקבלה לך דודי לקראת קלה פני שבת נקבלה בואי ושלום עטרת בעלה גם בשמחה ובצהלה תוך אמונה עם סגולה בואי חלה לך דודי לקראת קלה פני שבת נקבלה לך דודי לקראת קלה פני שבת נקבלה.
We continue with the lighting of the Shabbat candles on page 121.
As you see, my Shabbat candles behind me are already lit. As these Shabbat candles join me, give light to all who behold them. So may we by our lives give light to all who behold us. As their brightness reminds us of the generations of Israel who have kindled light, so may we in our own day be among those who kindle light. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav etzivanu lehadlik ner shel Shabbat.
And I invite you to use the chat box as services continue to share something that may have brought light into your life this week. We're going to continue with the Kaddish on page 144.
Yitkadav shmei Rabbah ve'olemod brachirutei ve'yomech malchutei v'chayechon v'yomechon u'v'chayei d'chol beit Yisrael Bagala ובזמן קריב במהרו, אמן. יהי שמירה ומבורך לעולם עולם מעל מיה, יתברך, יתברך וישתבח, ויתפאר ויתרומם ויתנשא, ויתהדר ויתעלה, ויתהלל, שמי דקודשה בריחו לעילה, מן כל ברכתה ושירתה, תושבחתה ונחמתה, דאמירן בעלמה תמרו, אמן.
We continue with the Baruch Hu. Please rise.
Baruch hu et Adonai hamevorach. Baruch Adonai hamevorach leolam va'ed.
We continue together in Hebrew. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher bidvaro ma'ariv aravi, v'chokhmah poteh she'erim, v'vuna mishenekim, u'machalit et hazmanim, u'mesader et ha'kochavim b'mishmoroteim barakia kirtsono. V'rayom v'layla golel or mipnei choshech, v'choshech mipnei or. Uma'avir yom u'mevi layla, umavdil ben yom u'ben layla Adonai tzvaot shemo. El Hai v'kayam, ani umavdil ben yom u'ben layla Adonai tzvaot shemo. El Hai v'kayam tamid yimloch aleinu le'olam va'ed. Baruch atah Adonai hama'ariv aravi.
Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Baruch Shem Kevod Malchuto Le'olam Va'ed.
You may be seated. We continue together.
את אדוני אלוהיך בכל לבבך ובכל נפשך ובכל מאודיך, והיו הדברים האלה אשר אנוכי מצווך היום על לבבך, ושיננתם לבניך, ודיברת בם, בשבתך בביתך, ובלכתך בדרך, ובשוכבך ובקומך, וקשרתם לאות על ידיך, והיו לטוטפות בין עיניך, וכתבתם על מזוזות ביתך ובשעריך, למען תזכרו ועשיתם את כל מצוותיי, והייתם קדושים לאלוהיכם. אני אדוני אלוהיכם, אשר הוצאתי אתכם מארץ מצרים, להיות לכם לאלוהים. אני אדוני אלוהיכם אמת.
Well, welcome to Paul and Amy visiting from Texas, and to Mackenzie, Basha'a Tova, as we say. We're thrilled for your good news, and may all happen in good time. We continue together with the reading on the top. Standing on the parted shores of history, we still believe what we were taught before ever we stood at Sinai's foot, that wherever we go, it is eternally Egypt, that there is a better place, a promised land, that the winding way to that promised land passes through the wilderness, that there is no way to get from here to there except by joining hands, marching together.
Yam bye ba bim bim bam, ya ba bye ba bim bam. Yam bye ba bim bim bam, ya ba bye ba bim bam. I die da die die, ya ba bye ba bim bam. I die da die die, ya ba bye ba bim bam. Mi chamocha, Elohim Adonai. Mi kamocha, nehedar b'kodesh. Norati Lord, oh Sefele. Norati Lord, oh Sefele. Mahalechutecha, Rauvanecha. Bokei hayam, Livnei Moshe. Ze Eli, Anu ve'yameru, Adonai imloch, L'olam va'ed. Yam bye bye bim bim bam, yam bye bye bim bam, yam bye bye bim bim bam, yam bye bye bim bam. I die da die die, yam bye bye bim bam. I die da die, yam bye bye bim bam. ונאמר, יפדה אדוני את יעקב, וגאלו מיד חזק ממנו, ברוך אתה אדוני, גאל ישראל.
Give us a place to rest, Adonai our God. Bring us into shelter in the soft, long evening shadows of your truth. For with you are true protection and safety, and in your presence are acceptance and gentle love. Watch over us as we go forth, prepare for us as we return. Spread over us your shelter of peace, over all we love, over our Jerusalem and yours. Baruch atah Adonai, haporei sukat shalom aleinu. Ve'al kol amo Yisrael, ve'al Yerushalayim.
Shamru v'nei Yisrael et ha-Shabbat, לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם. בדיורים בני ישראל, ותהי לעולם, ותהי לעולם, אותי לעולם. ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת, לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם. כי ששת ימים עשה אדוני, את השמיים ואת הארץ, ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת, לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם. וביום השביעי שבת נפש, שבת נפש, שבת ויהי ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת, לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם.
And we have Shabbat Shalom greetings from Heidi and Corey, from Cindy and Dan, and from Barbara and Bob Coppell, who are up in Boston. We now continue with, whoops, went a little too far, with the Tafila, our standing prayer. So if you are able, I invite you to please rise.
Adonai sifata tiftach ufi yagid tehilatecha. Adonai, open up my lips that my mouth may declare your praise. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu Elohei Avotenu v'imotenu Elohei Abraham, Elohei Yitzchak, Elohei Yaakov, Elohei Sarah, Elohei Rivka, Elohei Rachel, Elohei Leah, Ha'el Hagadol Hagibor v'Hanora, El Elyon, Gomel Chasadim Tovim, וקונה הכל, וזוכר חסדי אבות ואימהות, ומביא גאולה לבני בניהם, למען שמו באהבה. מלך עוזר ומושיע ומגן, ברוך אתה אדוני, מגן אברהם בעזרת שרה. אתה גיבור לעולם אדוני, נחיי הכל אתה רב להושיע, משיב הרוח ומוריד הגשם. מכלכל חיים בחסד, מחיי הכל ברחמים רבים, סומך נופלים ורופא חולים, ומתיר אסורים, ומקיים אמונתו לשני עפר. מי כמוך בעל גבורות ומידות מלך, מלך ממית ומחיה ומצמיח ישועה, ונאמן אתה להחיות הכל. ברוך אתה אדוני מחיי הכל. אתה קדוש ושמך קדוש, וקדושים בכל יום יהללוך סלה. ברוך אתה אדוני האל הקדוש.
God of goodness, we give thanks for the gift of life, wonder beyond words, for the awareness of soul, our light within, for the world around us so filled with beauty, for the richness of the earth which day by day sustains us. For all these and more, we offer thanks. Baruch atah Adonai, hatov shimcha, ulach na'a lahodaot. We take a moment now for the prayers of our hearts, and we continue silently.
Ose shalom bimromav, uyase shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael ve'imeru. Amen. Ose shalom bimromav, uyase shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael ve'imeru. Amen.
Even in our midst of celebrating Shabbat, we take a moment to call to our hearts and minds those who are in need of healing. Mishaberach Avotenu v'Imotenu, Avraham Yitzchak v'Yaakov, Sarah Rivka, Rachel v'Leah, Hu Yavarech et HaCholim. As I share the names of our from our Mishaberach list, I also invite you to put in the chat box the names of anyone for whom you might be praying. May the one who blessed our ancestors, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, Sarah, Rebecca, Rachel, and Leah, bless and heal those who are ill. Gabby Kraft Buckman, Sharon Neese, Ari Brofman, Sharon Zidney, Paula Wegg, Gary Donner, Anthony Corellis, Eliyahu Aron, Rosalie Landau, Michelle Colburn, Connor Galinas, Stephen Silberfein, Hannah Bat Shmuel, Vishana, and Jeff Gecker. And from our congregational family, we also think of Nancy Gentner. May the
Rabbi,
Holy One be filled with compassion for their health to be restored and their strength to be revived. May God swiftly send them a complete renewal of body and spirit. And let us say, Amen. I will continue sharing my screen and we will continue with the Kaddish. The page.
123.
Please rise.
Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, borei peri hagafen. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotav v'ratzavanu, v'shabbat kodsho be'ahava uvratzon inchilanu, zikaron lema'aseh v'reshit. Ki hu yom techila lemikrei kodesh, zecher litziat Mitzrayim. Ki vanu v'acharta ve'otanu kidashta mikol ha'amim. V'shabbat kodshecha me'ahava uv'ratzon hinchaltanu. Baruch atah Adonai mekadesh hashabbat. Amen. L'chaim.
L'chaim, you may be seated. So tonight, in honor of it being Erev Christmas, as some might call it, I wanted to share with you a story. I thought we should all have a Christmas story. And if you can see my screen, I'll just share this for a second. The story I'm going to share with you was written by David Cypress, who is a cartoonist and writer whose work often appears in the New Yorker. And as you can see from this little cartoon, it's a man. If you look at the left, it's a man and a little boy, and the man has an axe, and they're going to chop down a tree that looks sort of like a menorah, if you can all see that. And this is the story that David Cypress wrote to go along with that cartoon. This cartoon of mine, he writes, from 2006, is among my most autobiographical. Not that my father and I ever actually went into any woods together, unless you count Central Park. And I don't think he ever chopped down a tree. What's autobiographical is the confusion I felt as a child over the fact that my family, like many Upper West Side Reformed Jewish families in the 1950s, celebrated both Hanukkah and Christmas. We celebrated the two holidays in separate rooms, Christmas in the living room and Hanukkah in the kitchen, so that we wouldn't get them mixed up, I guess, or perhaps to prevent contamination. In the kitchen, on a baking sheet so the candles wouldn't drip on anything, was a gold-painted tin menorah I got at Sunday school. I loved lighting the orange candles and saying the blessing, mainly because it was the only time I was ever allowed to get that close to fire. In the living room, presents were piled under the piano until Christmas morning. Even for dedicated assimilators like my parents, a Christmas tree would have been a bridge too far. On Christmas Eve, over the presents, my mother would play Christmas carols while I sat beside her on the piano bench and sang along, often mystified by the strange, incomprehensible lyrics. 2 weeks before Christmas were the busiest for my father. He would open his jewelry shop on 61st Street and Lexington Avenue at 8 a.m. and stay until the last customer finished shopping at 9 or 10 that night. This made my father's Christmas shopping for my mother a bit of a challenge. She would have been happy to shop for her own presents and save him the trouble. Saving him the trouble was her life's work. But to his credit, he couldn't cross that line. So every year for an hour or so, my mother would hold down the fort at the shop while my father hurried out to get her gifts. That year I was 6, about to turn 7. I was with my mother when she arrived at the shop ready to take over. We had been to Bloomingdale's to see Santa. Just to see him, I wasn't allowed to sit on his lap. The reason was some version of, we don't know where it's been. It was decided that I would go along with my father while he did his shopping. And the details of what I said on that outing quickly became one of the cute, and for me, slightly embarrassing stories my father would tell and retell to friends and relatives in the coming years. He was still telling it the year he died when he was 93. It was a cold, late afternoon. We were heading for the shop of a Japanese dressmaker who, barely 5 feet tall herself, specialized in clothes for tiny women like my mother. My father wore an elegant camel's hair coat and a cashmere scarf. I wore a miniature replica of the same coat, wool mittens attached to the sleeves by metal clips, and a peaked wool hat with ear flaps covering my earmuffs, my mother insisted. My father was hatless, and as usual, his oversized ears turned bright red after a few seconds in the cold, his thick gray mustache frosty and stiff. This excursion was special for me. I rarely spent time alone with my father. He worked 6 days a week, and on Sundays, he was exhausted and preoccupied. As we walked east on 61st Street and turned down First Avenue, he did the one thing that reliably dissolved any questions I I might have had about where I stood with him. He took my hand and held it as we walked. The dressmaker greeted us warmly in her small shop. After a brief exchange of pleasantries and some mutual commiseration about running a small business during the holidays, my father said, "I want to get something nice for Estelle." "Oh, yes," the dressmaker said, making a show of giving the matter some thought before plunging into the overstuffed rack and pulling out a dress that my mother had selected weeks before. My father said it was perfect. The dressmaker wrapped it up nicely and then placed it in a brown paper bag so that my mother wouldn't know what it was. It was already dark when we stepped outside. "Mission accomplished," my father said, mainly to himself. "And I've got that jade necklace I've been saving for her all year back at the shop." "Let's take a little walk," he then suggested, and we turned at the next corner. In the middle of the block was a small red brick church. Behind a low wrought iron fence was a brightly floodlit nativity scene. Music was playing, "O Come All Ye Faithful," or something similar. We stopped. The nativity scene reminded me of the dioramas I loved at the Museum of Natural History, with cavemen and wild animals. My memory of the nativity scene is vivid because it was my first. It included life-size statues of the standard three humans, and more exciting for me, a cow, a sheep, a goat, and real straw and hay. "Why are they in a barn?" I asked my father. I took off my earmuffs so I could hear his answer. "It's all they could afford," he said. "How should I know? Let's get going. It's cold and it's getting late." "Is it smelly?" We had recently visited my mother's cousins in Connecticut, and they had taken me to a farm where you could pet the animals. What had impressed me was the smell. "Do the animals go to the bathroom right there?" "Yes, no, they probably go outside. Let's hope so, at least," my father said. "That's Jesus," I said, pointing to the baby. He was chubby and pink and reminded me of the phrase "tender and mild" in the Silent Night song, one of the songs my mother and I sang together at the piano. "What are the parents' names?" I asked. "Joseph and Mary. And those guys in the background on the camels," he pointed to the painted backdrop leaning against the wall of the church. "Those are the kings, supposedly." "What are kings supposedly?" "I meant it's just a story," he said. "Did they have countries? Why are they coming there on camels?" "They're bringing presents for the baby." "Where's Santa?" "What?" my father said. "The North Pole, I guess. Come on, David, let's go." He took my hand, but I didn't budge. "When Jesus grows up, he gets crucified," I told him. "They hammer nails into him." "What? How did you know about that?" "The movie, the one about the bathrobe." "The what?" "You mean the robe," my father said. We were both silent for a few seconds, contemplating the pink plaster infant in his mother's arms with a very bad death in his future. "Linda says Jesus was Jewish, but the Jews wanted to kill him anyway. What was he, Daddy, Jewish or Christian?" "Linda was my big sister," he said. "He was Jewish," he replied. "Christians hadn't been invented yet." "But the Jewish people wanted him dead?" "We have to go, David," my father said, pulling on my arm. "But I'll tell you all about it. But now we have to get along." "Do they kill the camels to make our coats?" He didn't reply to that one. We started walking. "Here's the deal with Jesus in a nutshell," he said. When he grew up, he started telling everyone he was the Son of God. And what? "No, enough with the questions, David," he said. Now we could see the shop was only a block away, and my father got tired of answering all of my questions. "Is he Christian?" "Yes, he's Christian. He's based on some saint, the one in charge of presents. Speaking of which," he held up a paper bag and smiled at me. "Don't tell your mother what's in here," he said. After we've been talking about, somehow we wound up talking about Santa Claus after we got done talking about Jesus. "Is that how Santa Claus gets in our apartment when we don't have a chimney and all the doors are double locked? It's a miracle, like walking on water." I don't know, David. Ask your mother. He pulled me along and picked up the pace. Why do we have Christmas since Santa is Christian and we're Jewish? Because we're Americans, he answered. His eyes were on the shop just a few stores away. But enough with the questions, David. He looked at me and gripped my hand tighter. It's just a holiday, so we can have presents. Understand? That's it. Case closed. But Hanukkah has presents. Ay, he sighed. Hanukkah's too long. Doing it all in one day makes so much more sense. Some of us have to go to work for a living, David. What's a virgin? I asked as I stumbled after him on 61st Street. Someone from Virginia, he replied. He said, no more questions, David. We're done for tonight. So I hope you all enjoyed a very Jewish American Christmas story tonight. We continue with Aleinu on page 586. Just allow me to share my screen once again. Hopefully you can all, okay.
Aleinu לשבח לאדון הכל, לתת גדולה ליוצר בראשית, שלא עשנו כגויי הארצות, ולא שמנו כמשפחות האדמה, שלא שם חלקנו כהם, וגורלנו ככל המונם. ואנחנו קוראים ומשתחווים ומודים לפני מלך מלכי המלכים הקדוש ברוך הוא. ונאמר והיה אדוני למלך על כל הארץ ביום ההוא יהיה אדוני אחד ושמו אחד.
You may be seated. Joan Didion begins her book, The Year of Magical Thinking, with these words. Life changes fast. Life changes in an instant. You sit down to dinner and life, as you know it, ends. Didion is referring to her husband's sudden death. In the unsparing prose for which she was famous, Didion continued. At some point, in the interest of remembering what seemed most striking about what had happened, I considered adding those words, the ordinary instant. I saw immediately that there would be no need to add the word ordinary because there would be no forgetting it. The word never left my mind. It was, in fact, the ordinary nature of everything preceding the event that prevented me from truly believing it had happened, absorbing it, incorporating it, getting past it. I recognized now there was nothing unusual in this. Confronted with sudden disaster, we all focus on how unremarkable the circumstances were in which the unthinkable occurred. We think of our loved ones whom death has recently taken from us, those who've died in the last month. Lillian Rubin, aunt of Diane Foreman, Ray Alcha, mother of Linda Kaplan, Arlene Furman, aunt of Stuart Berman, Judith Kellner, mother of Simon Kellner, Rabbi Mark Blumenthal, Elizabeth Enright, aunt of Lisa Urbano, Susan Mourner, grandmother of Matt Mendelson, Sam Sklar, brother-in-law of Barbara Crown, Shirley Fradkin, grandmother of Morgan Sertner. And as I read the names of those for whom we are remembering this Shabbat, I invite you to share any names in the chat box of those who you are remembering this week, as we remember those who died at this season in years past. Beatrice Altschiller, Sam Altswerger, Joseph Auerbach, Morris Bailey, Anna Batchev, Elise Berg, Larry Burke, Albert Bashansky, Harry Black, Thelma Blank, Leonard Brower, Abraham Brody, David Bubis, Irving Cohen, Jenny Dolinsky, Samuel Drazen, Annette Feldman, Mo Finkelstein, Samuel Goldstein, George R. Gompertz, Jeanette Gordon, Jacob Gothenker, Abram Green, Jacob Grossman, William Havson, Grace Herman, Sylvia Endersky, Evelyn Job, Ellen Caskell, David Kiddover, Nita Klaskow, Judith Vincent Klein, Helen Klein, May Colton, Harry Leibovitz, Alvin Lederman, Ralph Lederman, Jack Letteris, Morris Levin, June Manoff, Celia Mizell, Carl Millman, Matthew Napierski, Frida Nathanson, Samuel Nelson, Miriam Novick, Irene Novick, Jack Pollock, David Raskin, Charles Rosenkrantz, Walter Rothenberg, Jerry Sandak, May Schulman, Eugene Schwartz, Alice Seidman, Kenneth Shane, Sylvia Sloan, Beatrice Solomon, Sarah Spalansky, Ed Spiegel, Nathan Spinner, Rose Steinfeld, Ray Tannenbaum, Seymour Thaler, Sadie W. Timmons, Sylvia Turkel, Ruben Weitzman, Sandy Wish, Sue Young, Leon Zucker. And to that list, we add Nancy Gentner, Miriam Karchman, Gary Rohrer, Janice Grella, Marvin Goldman, Sylvia Endersky, Miriam Novick, Alice Cohen, Mark Spector, Edith Siegel. In sacred solidarity, we join with the words of the Mourner's Kaddish. Please rise. We join together. Yitkadal v'yitkadash me'rabah, v'yalmad divrach yurteh v'yamlech malchuteh, v'chayachon u'vyomechon u'v'chaye b'chol beit Yisrael, v'agala u'vizman kariv imru amen. Yehei shmei rabba mevarach le'elam u'v'ei omaya. Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitba'ar, v'yitkamam v'yitnaseh v'yitadar v'yitaleh v'yitalal, shmei gedusha b'richu. Leila min kol berchata v'shirata, tushbachata v'nechamata, ta'amiran balma v'imru amen. Yehei shlama rabba min shemaya, v'chayim alenu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. Oseh shalom b'mromav, hu ya'aseh shalom alenu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. May the one who creates harmony on high bring peace to us and to all Israel, and to which we say, amen. You may be seated. Just a few brief announcements. Our observance of Shabbat continues tomorrow morning with Holy Scrollers at 8:15 and the Minyan at 9:30. Simchat Shabbat will be at 9 o'clock. All services will be virtual. As we approach the end of the year, I just want to remind everyone that normally this is the time of the year when we would be hosting clients of Family Promise at the temple. Of course, due to the pandemic, we can't. And so we are having a fund drive, a drive for funds for Family Promise. The links to make donations are in the weekly email that you received yesterday. I invite you all to think about giving to Family Promise, which is a cause that is very close to the hearts of those of us at Temple Emanu-El and helps our neighbors who don't have permanent homes. And a very generous congregant has offered a $2,000 match. So our $2,000 of donations will become $4,000. In fact, we hope we'll collect more than that. It's a quiet week at the temple, but on Tuesday, the 28th at 7:30, I hope you'll join our rabbinic intern, Becky J, for her Rosh Chodesh discussion group at 7:30 on Zoom. And please see the e-blast for more programs coming up in the near future. And Cantor Novik, what is our closing song tonight?
Well, our closing song will wait just for a minute. I just wanted to thank God that you, Rabbi Appel, and you, Cantor Goldman, are well after having COVID. We are all so grateful that you are well. So page 625 is Adon Olam, and in honor of Erev Christmas, did you see the snow this morning? My Bubby would have been so happy because she always was afraid that it wouldn't snow on Erev Christmas. So, hi, Bubby. Okay, Adon Olam, here we go. Adon Olam Hashem Malach B'terem Kol Yitzir Nivra Le'etz Nasa V'chefso Kol Azay Melach Shemo Nivra Ve'achare Kichlot Hakol Levado Yimloch Nora Ve'hu Haya Ve'hu Hover Hu Hover Ve'hu Yihya B'tifara Ve'hu Echad V'yein Sheni Lahamshil Lo Lehachvira Veli Reshit Veli Tachrit Velo Ha'os Ve'ha'misra Ve'hu Eli Ve'chai Goli B'tzor Chevli Be'etzara Ve'hu Nisi Umanosli Mehenat Kosi Be'yom Ekra. We sing this one twice. Ve'yahado Apki Druchi Be'eti Shan Ve'ha'ira Ve'im Ruchi Geviati Adonai Li Ve'lo Ira Ve'yahado Apki Druchi Be'eti Shan Ve'ha'ira Ve'im Ruchi Geviati Adonai Li Ve'lo Ira.
That's such a pretty tune. Why don't we sing it more often? Well, Shabbat Shalom, everyone.
Shabbat Shalom, Rabbi.
You're all welcome to unmute yourself and share Shabbat greetings with everyone.
Shabbat shalom.
Shabbat shalom. Glad I know
Shalom.
you're sick. I'm glad you're better. Glad you're better, Rabbi. and
Thank you.
Cantor.
Thank you.
So much.
Shabbat Shalom, Carol
Thank you, Peter. Shabbat shalom.
and Martha.
Peter. So guys, this is my last Friday night for at least 2 months. So I wish you all not only Shabbat Shalom, but good health, please.
Yes.
Stay safe, Cantor.
And a good rest for you. Good time.
Shabbat shalom, everybody.
Shabbat Shalom.
That was such a great story, Rabbi.
Oh, thank you.
It was a good story.
But I love the Adon Olam. It was a perfect ending.
Right. I like the woman from Virginia.
Yeah.
That's the best part. I saw you laughing, Carol.
All right. Take care. Bye-bye.
Have a great week,
Shalom.
everyone. Shabbat Shalom.
Everybody,
Everyone.
Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat shalom.
And this Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.